When Michael Malone was let go, it caught almost everyone off guard, except for the Nuggets roster. As it turns out, they've been anticipating this moment for quite some time, almost as if it couldn't come soon enough. They were ready for it to happen. And honestly, the warning signs were pretty obvious. The guy was clearly unraveling on the sidelines. Just watch him. Malone is fired up. Oh, look at him now. He's absolutely heated, exchanging words with the referee. But his sideline behavior wasn't the sole factor behind his dismissal. Rumor has it that Michael Malone had a reputation for playing favorites, leaving some team members frustrated about being overlooked. Allegedly, there was lingering resentment among certain players regarding how Malone treated Russell Westbrook, holding him to an especially lofty standard. In this breakdown, we're diving deep into why some Nuggets players wanted Malone gone from the locker room, and why his departure seemed to shock absolutely no one on the team. A quiet rebellion was brewing. Fast forward to April 8th, 2025, one of the most headline-packed days in recent sports memory. On that day, the Oklahoma City Thunder obliterated a long-standing 50-year-old NBA record with their 51st double-digit victory, proving that showing mercy wasn't part of their strategy. Conversations about the tariff dominated national chatter. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Luka Doncic delivered a masterclass performance with 45 points in his own poetic quest for vindication, helping the Lakers secure a playoff spot at the expense of his former team. Just as the basketball world was trying to catch its breath, the Denver Nuggets dropped the ultimate surprise, announcing the sudden dismissal of head coach Michael Malone and their decision not to renew general manager Calvin Booth's contract. At the moment, the team held the fourth spot in the Western Conference standings with a 47-32 record, far from the type of disastrous performance usually prompting a mid-season coaching change. What made this decision even more surprising was that it occurred less than 2 years after Malone had led Denver to their historic first NBA championship in 2023. The timing was so peculiar that NBA icon Shaquille O'Neal voiced his shock on TNT, stating, "I think this could have been handled in a more professional manner." This is the coach who brought Denver their championship. They're still in contention to possibly win another title. Even with everything happening, you want to maintain the position for some level of home court advantage, which they currently have. Nuggets Governor Josh Kroenke provided little clarity on the matter, only noting that sometimes a team's success can conceal underlying problems. A vague remark alluded to underlying issues hiding beneath the team's seemingly solid record. The most enlightening details stemmed directly from Nikola Jokic. During his initial media briefing following the dismissal, the three-time MVP shared that he had been informed of the choice beforehand. "I'm not going to disclose what Josh said to me," he explained, "but yeah, I knew a bit earlier than everyone else. He told me they had made a decision. It wasn't a discussion, it was a decision, and he explained the reasons behind it. I listened and accepted it. That's all I can say. I'll keep what he shared with me to myself." This statement highlights several significant insights. Jokic was informed ahead of time, giving clear explanation for the dismissal, and perhaps most notably, he responded by calmly accepting the decision without protest. For a player of Jokic's caliber and influence, such quiet acquiescence speaks volumes. Coaches with championship credentials are rarely let go without at least implicit consent from their star player. Even more telling was Jokic's reflection on how the team's atmosphere shifted after Malone's exit. "It definitely changed," he remarked. "As I mentioned, if you're looking to make changes, this is the approach we take. And, some people just weren't willing to embrace that. It unfolded as expected." His straightforward acknowledgement that the team's atmosphere had noticeably shifted following Malone's departure implies that the previous leadership had fostered a challenging environment. The statement, "If you want to change something, that's how we do it," reveals that Jokic saw the coaching change as a necessary adjustment rather than an unfortunate event. Reports suggest Jokic wasn't the only one feeling this way. Several insiders noted that key team members had grown disillusioned with Malone's approach by the time his tenure ended, a polite way of saying the coach had lost the team's trust. This breakdown reportedly worsened after some candid and critical comments Malone made in post-game press conferences after a string of defeats. One particularly revealing moment came during one of his last media appearances, where his evident frustration with the team's lack of effort and involvement spilled into the public eye. "My job was to be honest," he remarked. The message delivered was unfiltered and direct. Those who are full of won't take it seriously. They'll dismiss it, saying the coach is overreacting. On the other hand, the ones who might actually care will take pause. This is especially true since nobody goes back to review their playing time. Nobody looks at game footage on their own. Speaking with clear frustration, he explained, "We'll have to show them the film ourselves." He went on to say, "If anyone disagrees with me, they're welcome to speak up." Yet, not a single person responded. Each player needs to take a hard look in the mirror, approach every game with the right mentality, and rediscover their sense of pride. Candace Parker underscored the importance of the team's lack of response to Malone's critique. "You're in the playoffs," she noted, "but what stands out is the difference a loud, passionate locker room makes. A vocal team, energized and engaged, is eager to address issues." However, Malone pointed out the complete absence of any reaction. To her, a silent locker room where no one speaks up is truly alarming. When a group decides not to take ownership or hold one another accountable, it reveals something deeper. This quietness in the face of criticism indicates a team that may have already tuned out their coach's message. When players stop responding or challenging their leader's feedback, it becomes clear they've emotionally disconnected, a quiet rebellion in the world of basketball. Barker reported that a significant source of player dissatisfaction stemmed from the perception that Malone showed favoritism towards certain star players. According to an NBA insider, frustrations grew among the team as Jokic and Jamal Murray were allegedly spared criticism during film reviews, while role players frequently faced scrutiny for defensive lapses. This apparent double standard reportedly disrupted team cohesion, as Jokic unwittingly found himself in an uncomfortable position, benefiting from leniency but likely aware of the resentment it caused among teammates. Known for his unselfish style of play, Jokic might have viewed this preferential treatment as more burdensome than beneficial. Additional sources claimed Malone's bias extended to veteran Russell Westbrook, whose underwhelming performances at age 36 further heightened tensions within the locker room. Westbrook's turnovers and declining form made it especially hard for other players to accept Malone's perceived partiality. The situation appeared to reach a boiling point during a late March matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Leading by 20 points at home against a critical Western Conference rival, the Nuggets spiraled into a disastrous collapse. This sixth consecutive loss to Minnesota, now led by former Nuggets GM Tim Connolly, was said to be the final blow to the players' trust in Malone's leadership. The troubled relationship between Michael Malone and his players wasn't just rooted in interpersonal conflicts. It was equally impacted by basketball-related issues that left the team frustrated. The core basketball problems, from defensive breakdowns to rotation choices that raised eyebrows, the team's on-court performance had been steadily declining, sparking growing concern within Denver's locker room. Central to these struggles was the team's significant defensive slump. Following their 2023 championship, the Nuggets saw their defensive rating plummet from 8th to 20th, a sharp drop that endangered their hopes of replicating their success, despite Nikola Jokic maintaining his MVP-caliber form. This collapse in defense couldn't be attributed solely to a lack of talent, though losing key defenders like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown undoubtedly had an impact. Reportedly, players started to question Malone's inability to adjust tactically and implement new defensive strategies to address these roster changes. For a coach with championship pedigree, this rigidity in adapting his approach was becoming a source of growing frustration for a team still loaded with potential to compete. According to Bleacher Report, Jokic himself had become notably upset with the team's waning defensive focus and execution. As highlighted by The Athletic's Tony Jones, Sam Amick, and Zach Powell, the three-time MVP's increasing unease over defensive lapses cast a spotlight on Malone's coaching methods and his capacity to galvanize the squad. Jokic's mounting frustration was evident through his animated reactions on the sidelines during the quartet of losses leading up to Malone's firing. He maintained an almost mechanical precision at the free throw line. Just watch how visibly distressed Jokic appears, unable to contain himself, yelling at a teammate. For someone who is generally celebrated for his calm and composed nature, such moments of exasperation underscored serious concerns about the team's trajectory. Adding further complications was Jamal Murray's situation. His hamstring troubles had restricted his availability, and Bill Simmons put forth the idea that discrepancies regarding how his injury was handled might have influenced the timing of Malone's removal. The lack of consistency in Murray's recovery updates, shifting from daily to weekly changes with no clear alignment between the coaching staff and the front office, highlighted the organizational chaos. Monica McNutt pointed out that Malone's pattern of public statements appeared to have grown tiresome for the players. This year, it almost felt like a recurring theme whenever the Nuggets endured puzzling losses. Michael Malone would often emphasize the need to elevate their level of competitiveness. He frequently brought up concerns about the team's effort. Now, of course, it's understandable that every team has its off nights. However, this specific issue seemed to surface often enough throughout the season to give pause. Considering the team is built around an MVP-caliber star and has retained its championship foundation, I found myself wondering whether Malone's voice was beginning to lose its influence within the locker room. The idea of a coach's message eventually falling flat isn't uncommon in professional sports. Even the most accomplished coaches can reach a point where their words hold less weight, as players grow indifferent to repeated critiques and motivational strategies over time. For veteran players who have listened to Malone's coaching style for close to a decade, this kind of exhaustion may have set in despite the team's earlier successes. Likewise, Malone's behavior on the sideline had started to raise concern. Known for his passionate reactions, particularly towards referees, Malone often lashed out during games, especially when calls didn't favor Jokic. While this protective attitude may have been valued by the players at one time, his history of intense outbursts and ejections, including notable incidents in 2020, 2021, and 2022, might have eventually been viewed as a hindrance rather than a help. A revealing moment unfolded on November 18, 2021, when Malone became so infuriated by a reversed foul call involving Jokic and Will Barton that it took multiple individuals to lead him off the court. In an unexpected twist, Jokic had to step in to calm his coach, a striking reversal of roles that showcased how Malone's passionate outbursts could sometimes overshadow the team's priorities. Jokic's remarks regarding interim coach David Adelman shed light on what players might have perceived as shortcomings in Malone's style. By praising Adelman for his straightforward and uncomplicated communication, Jokic hinted that Malone's methods may have been seen as overly intricate or lacking clarity. The repeated implication that Adelman's approach resonated better suggests a team yearning for a shift in leadership dynamics. This disconnect wasn't limited to gameplay, but reached into the team's organizational structure. Reports from The Athletic revealed that Malone and GM Calvin Booth had created such a fractious relationship that they reportedly stopped speaking altogether. This internal strife at the leadership level inevitably filtered down to the players, leaving them caught between conflicting visions for the team's direction. NBA insider Chris Broussard underscored the gravity of this situation, noting that it's hard for players to fully buy into a coach's philosophy when the team's top decision-makers fail to uphold basic professional communication with one another. This internal instability likely heightened any pre-existing concerns players had regarding Malone's strategies and choices in player rotations. The timing of Michael Malone's dismissal is not just surprising. It also underscores a recurring, unsettling theme in the NBA. Time and again, we see that past achievements and impressive records aren't solid guarantees of job security. His firing, coming a mere 3 games before the end of the regular season while the Nuggets were still vying firmly for a top 6 spot in the Western Conference, injects even more intrigue into the situation. The decision carries an air of déjà vu, reminiscent of other prominent coaching departures in recent memory. Consider the case of Taylor Jenkins, let go by the Memphis Grizzlies on March 28, 2025, only days prior to Malone's ousting. At the time, Jenkins had guided the Grizzlies to the 5th spot in the West with a 44-29 record, but a mere 4-game losing streak was enough for management to decide a change was necessary. The similarities to Malone's predicament are undeniable. A well-regarded coach leading a competitive team still in the playoff hunt, yet the franchise decides to stir the waters instead of staying the course. This decision highlights how, for coaches, sustained success no longer guarantees security. Consider the memorable example of David Blatt with the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. Despite boasting a stellar mid-season record of 30-11, tops in the Eastern Conference, Blatt was dismissed. While the statistics painted a picture of dominance, insider reports revealed friction between Blatt and his roster, particularly with LeBron James. The leadership's decision wasn't solely about wins and losses. It hinged on the interpersonal dynamics within the team. Now, a similar narrative seems to be brewing around Malone's departure, with speculation pointing to strained relationships between the coach and key Nuggets players. The January 2024 firing of Adrian Griffin by the Milwaukee Bucks echoes this trend as well. Even with a strong 30-13 record, his tenure came to an abrupt end. Although they had gotten off to a strong beginning, questions surrounding the Bucks' defensive approach and rumblings of discontent from key players, such as Giannis Antetokounmpo, ultimately contributed to his unexpected exit. Once more, achieving a winning record wasn't enough to safeguard a coach from underlying concerns involving chemistry, team identity, and unmet expectations. However, the weight of Malone's departure feels more striking, not only because he secured the franchise's inaugural championship and recorded the team's highest win total in history, but also due to the baffling timing, coming just days ahead of the playoffs. If Malone wasn't safe from dismissal so close to the postseason, what kind of signal does that send to the players? So where does the team stand now? The uncertain road ahead. When asked about the time required to adapt to the mid-season coaching shift with the playoffs fast approaching, Jokic underscored the pressing nature of the matter. His pragmatic response prioritized swift team adjustments over any emotional fallout, showcasing the professionalism that defines his approach. Even after the loss of the only NBA coach he had ever played under, Jokic's focus remains firmly on the immediate goal of competition, a sentiment likely echoed by the team's veteran players. On the subject of what kind of force emerges when the beast is awakened in the aftermath of his coaching change, Jokic provided a characteristically enigmatic reply. This intriguing clue implies that Jokic may see an opportunity for growth following Malone's departure. It hints at the possibility that the team could thrive more effectively now that what some viewed as a roadblock has been eliminated. As per Bleacher Report, Jokic understood and accepted the organization's choice to part ways with Malone. This acceptance, coupled with his dissatisfaction over the team's defensive struggles, indicates that while he may not have pushed for the decision, he recognized its necessity. Meanwhile, Jamal Murray's anticipated return adds another layer of intrigue to the mix. Reports suggested Murray was expected to recover from his hamstring issue within days of the coaching shakeup, a timing coincidence that invites speculation about whether frustrations over his recovery management under the previous leadership played a role in team tensions. For younger players who reportedly received limited chances under Malone's veteran-oriented approach, this change may symbolize new opportunities for career growth. Emerging talents like Christian Braun, Julian Strother, and Peyton Watson, draft picks closely tied to GM Calvin Booth, might now foresee greater chances to enhance their roles and development under interim coach David Adelman or the eventual full-time head coach. The divide in the roster between seasoned veterans like Jokic, Murray, and Gordon, who achieved championship success under Malone, and the younger players eager for a more prominent role introduces intricate dynamics for the team moving forward. The organization's ability to navigate and reconcile these opposing priorities will be essential to preserving cohesion during the shift in coaching leadership. The circumstances surrounding Malone's dismissal highlight a worrisome trend impacting championship-winning coaches across the NBA, as Molly Karen pointed out on First Take. Absolutely. I want to explore this further because it really feels as though this is becoming a recurring pattern with these types of coaches. Michael Malone has now become just the fourth coach in NBA history to be let go mid-season after achieving 40 or more wins. Moreover, each of the last 6 coaches to win an NBA championship are no longer with the teams they led to victory. Malone now joins the ranks of figures like Frank Vogel, who coached the Lakers, Mike Budenholzer of the Bucks, and Nick Nurse from the Raptors, each removed from their position in spite of leading their teams to championship glory. What stands out in these instances is how swiftly attitudes within the organization and among players can shift, transforming moments of triumph into seemingly irreparable conflicts. Mad Dog Russo shared a candid take on the modern NBA coaching landscape, emphasizing, "These jobs are incredibly demanding. Success relies on collaboration. The distinction between college basketball and the NBA lies in the relationship dynamics with star players. In the NBA, it's essential to form a true collaboration with your top athlete. That's what made Phil excel. He worked in tandem with Jordan and Kobe. Similarly, Riley partnered seamlessly with Magic and Ewing. Building this kind of connection with your star requires mutual alignment, shared perspectives, and a bond that mirrors a close friendship. This perspective underscores an essential reality. In today's NBA, the success of a team relies heavily on the synergy between coach and star player, perhaps more than anything else. When the collaboration falters, as seems to have occurred between Malone and Jokic despite their prior achievements, significant shifts often ensue, irrespective of records or championship accolades. To provide some historical perspective, Nick Wright weighed in on the implications for Jokic's legacy. On television, Marcus Morris made the controversial statement, "I don't have him in my top 20 all-time," which drew widespread criticism. The reaction was overwhelmingly dismissive, with people essentially claiming that opinion isn't valid. If you consider players who traditionally fall outside the top 20, names like Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and Dirk Nowitzki are often hovering near that threshold. But in Jokic's case, the consensus seems to be that he belongs firmly within that list. He is better than Malone. I agree, Wright concluded. What I'm saying is that this is the rare type of misstep he's caught in. The historical narrative won't be concerned with the lack of a solid supporting cast. Exactly. It won't consider the franchise's frugality. As for his postseason track record, here's where it stands. Over a decade-long career, he's advanced to the second round 5 times. He's moved past that stage twice, and he's reached the finals once, where he secured a championship. Among his peers, the only other player with a similar postseason record, even if he doesn't care about how we discuss it, is Giannis. Do you see what I mean? The consensus seems to be that he surpassed Giannis, but like everyone else during late May and early June, his team's results become the focus. I can't fault him. It's clear he's been incredible. However, history ultimately measures players by those achievements. This historical lens creates immense expectations for both Jokic and the Nuggets. To align his legacy with his immense skill, Jokic needs to secure more championships. If Malone's coaching style increasingly came to be seen as a hindrance to that goal, it would provide both personal and historical justifications for a coaching change, at least from the player's standpoint. Looking ahead, the Nuggets now face a myriad of potential outcomes, much of which will hinge on how players react in the aftermath of Malone's exit. In one potential future, the liberation storyline takes shape. With the departure of a coach some players reportedly felt disconnected from, the team finds itself re-energized and more focused. Their gameplay becomes more fluid, precise, and cohesive, transforming what many viewed as a high-stakes gamble into a remarkable postseason breakthrough. Should this scenario come to pass, the timing of Malone's dismissal might suddenly appear like a masterstroke. On the other hand, there's the adjustment narrative, where the squad struggles to adapt to a new coach just as the playoffs loom on the horizon. Chemistry falters, rotations feel disjointed, and the Nuggets exit earlier than anticipated. Yet, even under these circumstances, the experience could serve as a foundation for a steadier, more structured rebuild in the following season. A third possibility is the evolution trajectory. In this case, Malone's departure sparks a larger organizational overhaul centered wholly around Nikola Jokic. This might involve significant lineup changes, such as exploring the frequently discussed idea of trading Michael Porter Jr., a suggestion recently raised by Nick Wright, to address defensive weaknesses and create a more complementary, supporting cast around the franchise's cornerstone. The most unsettling scenario of all is the one we'll call the Exodus. In this narrative, the firing becomes a symptom of underlying issues within the organization. Disenchantment spreads among players, tensions escalate, and the team's very foundation starts to fracture. Should Jokic, the team's MVP and emotional cornerstone, begin to doubt the franchise's direction, it could set off a chain reaction, potentially leading other stars or critical players to seek their way out. At that stage, the team wouldn't simply be realigning its strategy. It would be rebuilding entirely from scratch. The upcoming coaching hire will shed light on how much sway the players hold in this process. Will they opt for a defensive-minded candidate to address their most glaring weakness? Will they lean towards someone who fosters shared responsibility and holds all players equally accountable? Or will their choice be someone whose candid and no-nonsense approach aligns with what Jokic seems to value? What's evident from the reactions of the team is that, while Malone's firing came as a surprise to outsiders, it was likely seen within the locker room as the unavoidable outcome of months of strained relationships and basketball struggles. It's unclear whether this significant shift will revitalize a skilled lineup or push their championship hopes even further off course. But the team seems prepared to face this fresh, albeit unpredictable, phase. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, feel free to select one of the on-screen options to explore more related content.